Dr. Liliana is the Assistant Director in iLearner Education Center. She has degrees in a range of ancient and modern literature and languages, and she brings her love for learning these to her teaching. Fluent in 6 languages, she has taught students of all ages across Europe and Asia. Liliana lived in Beijing before, where she worked in journalism and research. Outside the classroom, she enjoys practicing her translation skills. She has also produced translations in Mandarin and French texts, and they have been published in the US, China, and the UK. Well, right now, let me pass the mic to Dr. Liliana to start her presentation and sharing. Dr. Liliana, please.
Thank you very much, Gordon. That's very kind of you. It's great to be here, everyone. So as Gordon mentioned, we're running a bit short on time, so I'll try to keep this short and sweet for you and kind of go through the presentation a little bit more quickly than I planned. So I'm going to be talking today about teaching critical reading skills through iLearner publications, and Gordon is also going to be able to show you a little bit about the e-learning platforms as well. So hopefully you'll get a really good idea overall of how you can use our materials to make your classes a little bit more engaging, or just essentially to make life easier for you as well. Okay, so let's start. So I'll start by just kind of introducing iLearner first, then move on to talking about the 3 kind of key critical reading skill areas that I want to discuss. So the second part would be talking more about pre and post reading exercises, then talking about comprehension, and finally moving on to critical thinking, which of course is something that I think all teachers are very keen to kind of encourage in our students. Okay, so for those of you who don't know iLearner, I'll just go through this quickly. We're really about supporting teachers in Hong Kong. So a lot of the team at iLearner were former teachers or have some kind of expertise in teaching Hong Kong students. And we're very kind of keen on developing products and materials that are suited directly to the Hong Kong experience and students. We really want to just make your lives easier so that you can make your classes more engaging, more lively, so that your planning can actually be done more quickly, so that you can use a number of tools in order to engage your students. So you can see here that basically our reputation is really very much grounded in our expertise and innovation. You can see that we have a range of areas in which we specialize. We teach in class and kind of in person in our centers. We also have branches, you can see here, overseas education. But today what we're really going to be focusing on are our online programs and our publishing materials. So you can see here that actually we do have a range of materials for our iLearner publishing output. We have both English and Chinese books, we have worksheets. These have been kind of tied in also with the online programs. So you can see here that we have over 180,000 users. We serve 350 primary and secondary schools across Hong Kong, and we also have developed 13 learning platforms. So we kind of merged these 2 together in order to kind of produce materials and online kind of digital materials that will be able to help you to engage your students further in critical reading skills. So these are the range of publications that we have. We have Bugbug's Library, which is kind of more aimed at primary school. In fact, all of these are kind of more aimed at primary students, moving up to secondary too. But we have a range of ideas and concepts. So for example, Bugbug's Library is kind of more an introduction. We have phonics and composition. I Love Grammar, of course, is self-explanatory. It's much more to do with getting your students to really consolidate grammatical knowledge. And then Let's Learn About is a kind of broader global knowledge-based reading series, which introduces students to different kinds of concepts, such as even scientific experiments and, for example, geographical knowledge. And then Key to Classics is to improve students' awareness of the key kind of literary canon texts. And then we've got a couple of other things. For example, the Poetry Workbook, which really helps students who are a little bit older to hone their literary appreciation skills. And then Zhongxing Zhongwen, which is all about kind of trying to nurture a love for Chinese. So before I move on, I just want to show how these are kind of linked with the iLearner online program. So I'm just going to pass the time to Gordon, who's going to explain kind of the hybrid mode of these.
Thank you, Dr. Liliana. Let me share the screen. Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay. I'm quickly introducing a new one because this year we have launched an iLearner's e-library platform. It is an online hub for teachers and students to integrate reading records in the school library with extracurricular reading. And it allows students to share their reading experience. It also provides e-reading materials. This makes it easier for teachers to reward students as well as making book sharing a fun activity. The platform facilitates students to give record to their reading activities, including the books borrowed from the school library and the ebooks available on the platform. What's more is that students can also enter details about their extracurricular reading, such as book information, post-reading reflections, and upload audio files as shown. And additionally, the platform generates statistics that we believe teachers will need on students' reading activities automatically, such as the number of pages the students have read, the number of notes, the reading notes the students have completed, and the time spent on the reading. Teachers can use the platform to recommend, assign reading tasks or activities to foster a school-wide reading culture. It instills a love of reading in students by sharing their electronic reading diaries with their classmates. From the experience of the schools using the platform, the competition can be so competitive because the students will compete among themselves to get the high results, and iLearner will prepare the certificates and gifts for the top students in the e-library platform. It provides a stock of carefully leveled free electronic resources for students to read as well. There are over 300, 400. And schools can also subscribe iLearner e-readers for students so that their proficiency will be enhanced through reading and practice. And that's a quick sharing. Now I pass the mic to Dr. Liliana. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just move on from this. So you can see that Gordon has really kind of explained how we've got this kind of hybrid innovation going on with the iLearner publications on the one hand, and then how those are integrated into our online platforms. And I think it's also really important just to highlight some of the key ideas behind our products. One is that we're really trying to foster independent learning. So there's lots of exercises that students can do by themselves. It's also a real focus on primary level materials that are very much in line with the Hong Kong curriculum. And then related to that, a lot of the materials have the Hong Kong students in mind. So there's a link between what they're reading on the page or on the screen and their kind of lived experience in Hong Kong. And I think this is really important because, as you all know, that a lot of the materials from other publishers might be very much tailored to kind of a British experience or an American experience. And there might be kind of a little bit of a gap between what is being learned and what is being lived by the students. So this really allows the students to bridge what they're learning and can see that it's actually very relevant to what they're experiencing. Okay, so moving on now to the critical reading skills. So these are the kind of 4 areas I want to talk about today. So thinking about how to engage our students in the pre-reading kind of phase of the experience, and then post-reading, how do we actually get them to think about what they've just done? Generally comprehension skills, and then moving on to critical thinking. So let's start with pre-reading and post-reading. So pre-reading here. So the Black Box Library, this is kind of character-based learning. Like I mentioned before, it's very much aimed at primary school students. It's really fun. The characters get in all kinds of adventures, and there's multiple levels as well. So you can use that across the different grades. And as you can see here, we've got a lot of pre-reading learning support in order to try to kind of get the students into the story in a kind of very engaging way. So we've got, for example, some warm-up exercises to try to engage them with their prior knowledge. There's also a lot of questions so that the students and teachers can talk about what it is that they're going to be reading. So it sets the tone and also kind of engages the students' interest. And for the lower levels, we've got prediction practice. So thinking about what the story is going to be about. And then for older levels, so we've got the high levels, we've got mind maps and word association activities. So really trying to get the students to see the broader picture, the broader context of the story. And as you can see here, there's also a few notes about kind of more technical things. In this case, we've got some phonics. There might also be technical things about, for example, grammar and things like that. So really trying to get the students ready for the reading of the story. With our Let's Learn About series, which I mentioned is kind of more about global learning, again, this is aimed at different levels, mostly primary, but some secondary. So we also have some warm-up exercises, pre-reading questions, as you can see here, which animals can be good pets? Where can a pet live in your home? So this is also kind of linked to critical thinking as well. And there's also some real world problems. So again, relating kind of the idea of the story to a lived experience and kind of the personal experience of the students in Hong Kong. So you can see also there's more kind of learning support here with Let's Learn About. There's glossaries, there's also kind of more information about particular words if there's a vocabulary focus. There's also supporting summary and then also extension activity. And of course, these materials are very, very flexible. So depending on the ability of your students, you can focus more on one thing than the other. So obviously, of course, if you have very strong students, they can just focus on the extension activity. If you have kind of more difficult students or kind of, sorry, I don't know what's happened there. If you have less able students, then you can, of course, work on the glossary. Okay, moving on to Key to Classics. So as I mentioned, this is about improving literary appreciation. For this, we have pre-reading learning support, which includes questions, literacy tips, thinking about the characters as well. So they're introducing the students to some of the basic elements of the story. Okay, moving on to post-reading engagement. So once the student has read through the text, then what can we do in order to try to get them to consolidate the knowledge and consolidate certain concepts that have been brought out through the text? So we can have a few consolidation exercises such as these grammatical exercises. There's also some creative tasks too. With the lower levels, then you can use phonics, glossary and comprehension skills. With the high levels, you can also do kind of more fun things like book reviews, like guided writing. So you can see this is an example. So you've got a little bit of comprehension, which I'll talk about later, but then also you might have kind of longer questions too. So this is something that you can set your students, and it's all part of the package. So you can, that will be quite a large section of a class, for example. Okay, for the post-reading learning support for Let's Learn About, there's bonus activities. There's also kind of these really creative ideas. In this case, it's from a book about different kinds of foods. And so again, it's related to lived experience. For Key to Classics, you might have more literary exercises. There's also Explore More. So it's really trying to get the students to advance their knowledge of literature, of key texts, for example. So here we've got an extract from Hans Christian Andersen. So really trying to get the students to kind of live up to a challenge. And then you can also see these kinds of post-reading learning support exercises. I'm talking about the examples of repetition, or also kind of the use of similes in this case. Okay, moving on to comprehension skills. So I'm just whizzing through because I know that we're running out of time. So for comprehension skills, what can we do in order to try to help our students to really understand what's going on during the story? So for example, in Buck's library, we have within the books a glossary, and we have not only what form of the word it is, what part of speech it is, but also we've got the Chinese translation, and then the meaning, and then the use of it. So this should help your students. We've also got lots of different kinds of exercises which can be really useful for getting the students to engage with the story and to really understand it. We've got for the younger students these kinds of, matching or coloring, or these kinds of comprehension questions, or putting things in order, closed passages, those kinds of things. And then let's learn about, there might also be some extra information about different text types, which of course are really important for later on if students go on to do the DSE and they have to deal with different text types. This is a really good way of getting them introduced to that kind of exercise. For key to classics, then again, we've got story questions. We've got, for example, Chinese translations of key vocabulary. It's also important to see that in these images in key to classics, we actually have extracts from the original text, because of course, key to classics is kind of like a simplified version of these important canonical stories. In this case, we've actually kind of used the extracts here to get students exposed to more difficult language. And here you can see also that we've got some examples of the key vocabulary on a page. Okay, moving on to critical thinking. So we can see here that we mentioned before that in Bugbug's library, we have some pre-reading questions that could be seen as engaging students' critical thinking, and really to get them to use their imagination. So, getting them to kind of use more hypothetical kinds of ways of thinking. For example, what would you do if you saw a dangerous animal? So this is actually quite a low-level book, but we're trying to get students to really think about the kind of hypothetical implications of these situations, but also to do that in English, which is kind of killing two birds with one stone. Okay, but let's learn about, then you can also see that there's a lot of emphasis on general knowledge. There's, for example, extracts about scientific experiments. There's also lots of interdisciplinary kind of materials, so moving from literature to science to geography. So really trying to up the students' critical thinking and global awareness. For key to classics, again, we have some information about literature. For example, here it's talking about what a trilogy is, and you can use this in order to kind of expand their general understanding of what literature is, what doesn't count as literature, for example, why this is seen as a story, how is it different from nonfiction. And also, there's a lot of creative materials too. So to try to get the students to base their kind of new knowledge and integrate it into kind of their own interpretation or their own creative writing tasks, which can be really fun. And I think it's a really good way of getting students to engage with the story and consolidate some knowledge, as well as using their imagination and creativity. Okay, so that was a very fast kind of run through. I just wanted to leave you again with these kind of six books series in our publications, so that you understand that there's actually lots of things here that we can offer you to help you kind of hopefully improve your classes, and to, as I mentioned before, we really want to make your lives easier, and we want to help you to be the best teachers that you can be, and also to engage your students as much as possible. So hopefully I've given you kind of a good idea of how you can do that. I think that's the end of the presentation, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.